In 1950, Governor George Nigh delivered a commencement speech for the first time. At that point, he was in the state legislature. He actually had to hitchhike, if I remember the story correctly, to deliver that address. Today, Governor George Nigh joins us here in the Oklahomans Video Studio. Sir, always great to see you. Thanks for stopping by this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm honored.
And later this week in Clinton, I believe, you will be delivering a commencement address for the 66th consecutive year. Congratulations on the longevity, and they are lucky to hear from you.
Thank you.
66 years consecutively and on Route 66. That's pretty cool.
Well, I was a senior at East Central at Ada in 1950 and a candidate for my first time running for the legislature in Pittsburgh County, McAllister. And so I didn't own a car back in 1950. I didn't own a car. So I hitchhiked into a little rural 2-room, 8th-grade schoolhouse in western Pittsburgh County, just out of our Paler, and made my first commencement speech. And now I'm going to go to Clinton this year, as you said, the 66th consecutive year of never missing at least once. Now, some years I made 6 or 7, but I particularly wanted to do my 66th year on 66, and they invited me to come to Clinton, and I said, great. And so the title of my remarks are going to be Get Your Kicks on Route 66, that you can do it as a high school or college graduate along Highway 66. Right here in Oklahoma, you can become a world figure.
Is that some of the advice you've imparted over the years is, hey, you have accomplished this, whether it's 8th grade, high school, college, or whatever, but hey, don't stop. You can keep going.
Yeah, don't stop. You can keep going. I found out a long time ago, coming from southeastern Oklahoma and then making commencement speeches in rural communities, that kids would be sitting there on cold folding chairs or in a high school gym, and their grandparents and parents would be in from all over the state and so forth. And they'd be sitting there, well, what chance do I have? I'm here from our Paler, Oklahoma, or I'm here from Clinton, Oklahoma, I'm here from, Godibo, Oklahoma. What chance do I have? And I just started using the text, you can do it from here. You can do it from here. And just think of all the famous, successful people that have come from Oklahoma here in the middle of the United States that became world figures.
It's not New York, it's not LA, it's right here in the middle of the Mickey Mantle.
Mickey Mantle's come in on Highway 66,
sure,
right up northeastern Oklahoma, and go out Roger Miller and around Eric, Oklahoma, as you go out into the Texas Panhandle, and just come down, it just, Garth Brooks right over there in Yukon, and just think you drive by OCU on Route 66, home of 3 Miss Americas.
That's right.
Wow.
Tons of talent that come out of there. We're talking with George Nigh. He was 2 terms as governor, 4 terms as lieutenant governor, the first governor to carry all 77 counties in Oklahoma.
Thank you.
Congrats on all of that. Has your commencement speech, has it changed in 66 years?
Well, yeah, it changes, but a lot would be familiar because I never really write a speech. I've only, in my political career, which has gone a long time, I basically only gave 3 written speeches.
Really?
I generally write a note on my hand. They say I cheat. If I'd been in school, I could have passed a test. But I'll write I'll write on my left hand, get your kicks, and that will remind me of what I want to talk about.
And that gets you going, just that little theme there.
And then I just go from there. And then if I have another theme, but I don't prepare speeches, so sometimes there'll be some familiar or similar. A lot of people say, well, I've heard that 100 times, but one story will just fit a lot of speeches. And so I can't say that I give the same speech, but it'll sound familiar to a lot of people. But since these are seniors in high school, they will not have heard me.
No, that's possibly true.
It may be old stuff to their grandparents, but not to them.
I was texting my friend Ben Harris, who I believe you know as well. Last night I was like, hey, I get the honor of talking to Governor Nigh tomorrow. What question would you ask him? And Ben said,
Ben gave you one?
Ben gave me a question. He says, what piece of advice have you given these students through all the years that you most hope that they follow?
Well, what I mostly try to tell them is to have confidence in yourself, that regardless of where you are, that's just your starting point. So if you're in Chicago, if you're in New York City, if you're in Frederick, that's your starting point. And your life success will basically depend on what you do with what you have where you are. And then you go from there. And I just use the expression, you can do it from here. One of the things, now for 66 years I've made all these commencement speeches, and you say, are they all the same, or you give different ones? The one I really remember that I gave, I impressed myself. It was, strangely enough, in Weatherford, Oklahoma, right out next door to Clinton, same county.
Yeah.
And I was speaking at an outdoor football stadium, folding chairs, and I thought, boy, these kids are really going to be bored when I get up. You know, hey, shut up. The senior party starts when you get out of here.
Looking at their watches as soon as he
grandparents
finishes.
say, I drove 200 miles to hear this, you know. But I was thinking, so when I got up at Weatherford, trying to think, how can I get their attention? There was a full moon coming up over my shoulder. And I just suddenly it hit me. And I'm going to tell this story again because it was at Weatherford. This just hit me. And I said, don't look at me. Look at that full moon, because that moon is my commencement speech, right up there. And it was just a full moon coming up over my shoulder. And I kind of stepped away from the mic so that the full moon, I said, that's my commencement. That's my challenge to you, because you don't think you can do it. Just think of all the kids that have sat here on these cold folding chairs at Weatherford, Oklahoma, saying, oh, what chance do I have? And look at that moon. You're not going to believe this. Coincidentally, that very night, from that very moon, Tom Stafford,
Oklahoma native,
from Weatherford, Oklahoma, had been around the moon.
Nice. And
was coming home. And I said, and you think you can't do it from Weatherford? And there he is, the commander. And he was, and then when the U.S. went together with Russia, they had the first joint effort in space. He was the commander. He's from Weatherford, Oklahoma, on Route 66. So that's going to be, that's what I've tried to tell him. And tell Ben, I tried to tell him that when he was at UCO, a student, when I was president.
Sure.
You can do it, Ben. But it, I think these Oklahoma high school students and college graduates need to know. I mean, I'm here in the Daily Oklahoman. I just look out right there. There's the Devon Tower. Mm-hmm. You drive down the old Highway 66 and look, and there's Devon Tower. And you think, hey, you drive by, you say, Continental Harold Hamm, one of the richest men in the world? That's his building right there?
It's just right around the corner.
Right, it's that way. Or you could do it, and I could name the others also, but I think you'll be surprised as you go through Oklahoma history. And to me, here we are, we're talking about where we are, the day at Oklahoma, back downtown in Oklahoma City, and I'm glad you're downtown.
History has come back.
History has come back. Right across the street, right over there, is the Skirvin Hotel. Most people don't know where it got its name, from the Skirvin family.
That's right.
Okay. Most people don't know, well, the Skirvin family, okay, but they had a daughter. Her name was Pearl Skirvin. Their family had that hotel. They lived about 10 blocks up here, 15 blocks, 20 blocks, somewhere up just northwest. And that became Pearl Mesta. And Pearl Mesta, from the Skirvin Hotel in Oklahoma City, her family, Pearl Mesta ended up being the most popular female hostess of functions in the world. She was called the hostess with the mostest.
Hostess with the mostest.
They wrote a Broadway play about her. They did a movie about her. But what I remember, even more than the Broadway play and the movie, I remember that Pearl Mesta, Pearl Skirvin, was appointed by Harry Truman as ambassador to Luxembourg. She was the first woman ambassador in American history to a foreign country. And she just grew up right over there, right 2 blocks from where we're sitting. And so she did it
from here,
her roots,
from Oklahoma.
You can do it from here.
These students in Clinton are in for a treat. Still a master storyteller, Governor George Nigh. We mentioned your distinguished political career. There'll be a lot of Republicans across the street later this week.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad they're coming.
Does that make you worried?
No. One of the things I did when I was lieutenant governor, when I was elected lieutenant governor in 1958, the lieutenant governor had no job. I came to the Capitol to go to work, I remember the first day I went in to check out my office, just before I took office. I went in to check it out. You shared your office with 4 state senators. I had a half-time secretary, no press secretary, no security, a half-time secretary for the lieutenant governor's job. And the lieutenant governor that preceded me was the first lieutenant governor ever even have a car. No driver, but he had a car. But it was a pickup truck. He was from rural Oklahoma, so he got a state car, he bought a pickup truck. But the lieutenant governor had no job. And so the reason I'm telling you this is that I worked hard to get the lieutenant governor to be chairman of the tourism committee, and we created convention business. And one of the great economic factors in Oklahoma is the number of conventions, regional conferences that we have in Oklahoma City and in Tulsa and in some of our state resorts, private and public. And so I'm glad the Republicans are coming here. I really am. It brings attention to Oklahoma,
political
but
spotlight.
It also brings economic development.
Which fills up the Skirvin right around the corner.
Which fills up the Skirvin Hotel right over there, and all the other places that we're building around here. Now, convention is important to Oklahoma's economic development.
Governor, 66 consecutive years of giving a commencement speech. Are you going to end it this year, Route 66, 60, or just keep going?
Well,
or just see how it goes?
I'll just see how it goes. I think probably something else that would be of interest is how it affected my life. 2 things that I'll tell you about. One, it probably is the best non-political speech you can make in any community, because you have people sitting there from all walks of life, all races, all colors, all creeds, all financial conditions, sitting in one room, and you get to make a speech. So if you don't bore them to death, it's a great political opportunity for you, because they'll say, "Oh yeah, I remember." I heard Aubrey McClendon speak at Rotary one time. They were honoring him. And as a gift to him for coming and speaking, they gave him a copy of the book that Bob Burke wrote about me. And he took this book. Aubrey McClendon said, "Well, this is neat that you're giving me a book about George Nigh." He gave my commencement speech from high school. He said, "I was the president of the student body, and I invited him to come make the commencement speech," when he was in high school. And I'm looking at Aubrey McClendon, at Chesapeake.
Very nice.
But it's a great opportunity to get to know the state, because I went everywhere. But the one thing that affected my life was my second year. I made the commencement speech at Hartshorn High School, there again in Pittsburgh County. My grandparents had lived in Hartshorn, and so I was good to be back in Hartshorn. I grew up fishing down here on the lake, 2 miles south and all that. But I'd been elected to the legislature as a senior in college, and growing up, all I'd done as a job was work for my dad in his neighborhood grocery store. All my life, I've worked in the neighborhood grocery store. I only had one other job in my whole life growing up, and that was riding a bike and delivering from a drugstore. But so I was working in that grocery store. So I got elected to the legislature. I came to Oklahoma City, to the Capitol, for my first legislative session. Then we'd only met every other year, so I had a year and a half before I came back to the Capitol. And I didn't have a job. I was working with my dad. But I gave that speech at Hartshorn High School, and the principal, Dr. Finest Sandlin, came up to me after that, about 2 days. He came to my dad's grocery store in McAllister. He came over from Hartshorn, and he said, "You need to be a school teacher." I said, "My mother was a school teacher, my sister's a school teacher, one of my brothers was a school teacher. I don't want to teach school." He said, "You need to be a school teacher." And I said, "Why?" He said, "You kept all of our students awake during your commencement
Kept their
speech.
attention.
You kept them all awake during your commencement speech. And if you can do that in a commencement speech, you ought to be in the classroom with them." And I'd graduated from East Central, which was then a teacher's college, but I didn't have a teaching certificate. But all I needed was my practice teaching. So that summer, I went back to East Central, got 8 hours of practice teaching, and Dr. Sandlin hired me to teach Oklahoma history at McAllister High School, and I loved it. And so my involvement in education from there to being president of UCO came about because of a commencement speech in 1951 in Hartshorn, Oklahoma.
You had just gotten started at that point,
it.
your second year to give a commencement speech.
Yeah.
He's Governor George Nigh. I do want to mention one thing real fast. Congratulations for the Pendleton Awards Award given to you and Donna, your wife.
Thank you.
I'll explain this. The 50th anniversary celebration of Keep Oklahoma Beautiful. This is just an example of the various things you're involved with. It was recently held at the Oklahoma History Center. Former governors who were instrumental in the success of that group were honored. Congratulations to you and Donna for staying so active and involved in this community and for all the, well, the benefits that we reap for your works.
I'm very proud of Donna's involvement. Me, you would expect, you know, here's the politician, he's involved. When Donna married me, she had no idea. I had run for governor in 1962 and lost. I'd never met Donna. And I was introduced to her by one of my former students from McAllister that knew her here in Oklahoma City. And she worked for TWA Airline. Strangely enough, the headquarters was in the Skirvin Hotel we just talked about. But she worked for TWA. And this former student and I met and married Donna. She had no idea that I was ever going to get back in politics. So 4 years later, I decided I want to get back in the ladder trying to be governor. So I was going to run for lieutenant governor again. And I said, "What, is that okay?" And she said, "Yeah." And then I said, "Okay, now I want to run for governor." And she said, I'll work real hard for you," whatever she said. "I'll work for you real hard if you promise me something." Well, everybody says, "Promise me something."
Sure.
I said, "Okay, you're a typical voter. I'll make you a promise." And she said, "Promise me you'll do something for the," at that day, the term was mentally retarded. Today, development disabled. She said, "We need to do more for people who have needs." And I said, "Okay, we'll do that." And then she led an effort in the legislature to expand the group home programs. And when I became governor, we had, I think, 2 group homes, 1 or 2 just group homes for the development disabled. When I left office, we had over 100. And President Clinton appointed her to his national committee on mental retardation. And to this day, we both work trying to help those people. She has a foundation that her friends named in her honor, created name, excuse me, the Donna Nigh Foundation. So even to this day, we work on that. You know, I'm proud, for example, somebody will say, "What are you proudest of?" Well, you know, I'm proud of the roads, the Broadway extension, the Kilpatrick Turnpike, and all that sort of, you know, I'm proud of all that, and VOTEC, and awesome, as you know, as whatever. But I said, what I'm really excuse me, what I'm really proud of is doing things for people who have special needs. We had every year we were at the mansion, we had an Easter egg hunt for the blind. Blind kids came and hunted Easter eggs. And the old Lego, the pantyhose that the women used to wear, they came in Legos. Volunteers out in western Oklahoma City put beepers in there. And we'd give a blind kid a basket, and they'd lay an Easter egg and turn a beeper on. And the kid would find the egg. Can you imagine? I'm very proud. We built a library for the blind. It's out by the Capitol, a library for the blind. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud that we made our facilities at all our state parks handicapped accessible. And to end that discussion would be, we had open house every Wednesday at the mansion, but to get into the mansion, you had to climb up some steps. And I said, put a ramp in. Oh, you can't do that. This is capital preservation.
That's right.
You can't do that.
It's historic.
I said, wait a minute. I'm not going to live in the state's and the people's home, and some of the people can't get in it. If we're going to have an open house, it's for the people. I said, I want a ramp there. So they built a ramp, and we were having an open house, and a lady came up and said, "Oh," and Donna and I are shaking hands, and she stopped and said, "Oh, you have a ramp here." And I said, "Yes, it's just opened. This is the first time we've used." She said, "My mother is across the street in the parking lot. She's in a wheelchair, and she's just waiting for me because we knew she couldn't get in."
Well, that's great.
I said, "You go get your mother." And she went over and got her mother and They came up the ramp. She's the first person.
She broke in the ramp for you.
She came in the ramp. She broke it. We should have had a ribbon cutting. She came up the ramp and went on a tour of the mansion. Now, no elevator, so she only toured the ground floor. But I got to tell you this: as she was coming up the ramp, she was crying, and she was crying for joy. And I knew we'd done something good. And so, proudest I think you are of is when you're serving others. And I'm really proud of what we did for people who had special needs.
Governor George Nigh, fantastic storyteller, a good American.
Thank you.
Enjoyed the conversation. Thank you,
My
sir.
pleasure.